This morning. We are now entering Exodus. So we just finished the last of Genesis last weekend with the Torah portions. So we are now going to embark on in Exodus. So today's Torah portion starts, it's actually Exodus chapter 1, verse 1 through Exodus chapter 6, verse 1. We're not going to do the whole 6 chapters this morning, but we're going to pick some bits and pieces out of it. So let's actually turn to Exodus chapter 3. Actually, we'll start at verse 1 in Exodus chapter 3. It says, "Now Moses kept the flock of Jethro, his father-in-law, the priest of Midian, and he led the flock to the back or west side of the wilderness and came to Horeb or Sinai, the mountain of God. The angel of the Lord appeared to him in a flame of fire out of the midst of a bush. And he looked, and behold, the bush burned with fire, yet was not consumed. And Moses said, I will now turn aside and see this great sight, why the bush is not burned. And when the Lord saw that he turned aside to see, God called to him out of the midst of the bush and said, Moses, Moses. And he said, Here am I. God said, Do not come near. Put your shoes off your feet, for the place on which you stand is holy ground. Also he said, I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. And Moses hid his face, for he was afraid to look at God. And the Lord said, I have surely seen the affliction of my people who are in Egypt, and have heard their cry because of their taskmasters and oppressors, for I know their sorrows and sufferings and trials. And I have come down to deliver them out of the hand and power of the Egyptians, and to bring them up out of that land, to a land good and large, a land flowing with milk and honey, a land of plenty, to the place of the Canaanite, the Hittite, the Amorite, the Perizzite, the Hivite, and the Jebusite. Now behold, the cry of the Israelites has come to me, and I have also seen how the Egyptians oppressed them. Come now, therefore, and I will send you to Pharaoh, that you may bring forth my people, the Israelites, out of Egypt. And Moses said to God, Who am I, that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the Israelites out of Egypt? God said, I will surely be with you, and this shall be the sign to you that I have sent you. When you have brought the people out of Egypt, you shall serve God on this mountain. And Moses said to God, Behold, when I come to the Israelites and say to them, The God of your fathers has sent me to you, and they say to me, What is his name? What shall I say to them? And God said to Moses, I am who I am, and what I am. And I will be what I will be. And he said, You shall say this to the Israelites, I am has sent me to you. And God said also to Moses, This shall you say to the Israelites, The Lord, the God of your fathers, of Abraham, of Isaac, and of Jacob, has sent me to you. This is my name forever, and by this name I am to be remembered to all generations. So we're going to stop there for a second. And so the thing we're going to focus on was Yahweh's response back to Moses. I am who I am and what I am, and I will be what I will be. I am has sent me to you. That is who he is. He is the great I am. His name is I am. In Exodus, where we just read here in Exodus, we see that Moses encountered God for the first time. He, in exile from Egypt, the nation that raised him as a prince, renounced his status and dwelled with the Hebrews, of whom he was one. He married a shepherdess and tended to her father Jethro's sheep. When he took the sheep to the back of the desert, Moses came to Horeb, the mountain of God, and where he turned aside to see the angel of the Lord, who appeared to him in a flame of fire from the midst of a bush. This is how Yahweh introduced himself to Moses. He showed himself strong to Moses through the fire in the bush. God called to Moses from the bush. Then he said, Do not come near. Take your sandals off your feet, for the place in which you are standing is holy ground. What did Moses do? He hid his face, for he was afraid to look at God. During their exchange, Moses' questions God about his name. The name he was described to the Israelites as the one who sent him to go to Pharaoh to bring God's children out of Egypt. And God answered him, I am who I am. Amen. Now, when you read that in the Amplified translation, and I'm pretty sure in other translations it's like this way too, but when he says, I am who I am, it's all in capital letters. I am who I am, and I will be what I said I will be. Whatever I have promised to do for you, that is who I am. Just in those two little words, I am, is the power of Yahweh. I am, actually, when you read in the translations of the Hebrew and stuff, I am is Yahweh. I am means Yahweh. When God said, I am who I am, repeating I am twice, he is stating his name, Yahweh, his name forever. He was in fact saying, he is. Period. That's what he's saying. He is. He is everything. He's all-consuming. He's everything. I am that I am. And what I have promised to you, I am, and I will be. He is stating he is the eternal one who has no beginning or end. He is the really real, the ultimate reality. All reality is according to his will. He is truth. His truth is absolute. I am speaks to his omnipotence, omnipresence, and omniscience in and for all time. He is constant, and he is past, present, and future. I am that I am, past, present, and future, all in one, all now. He is eternal. We were talking last week about how he takes the time element out of everything because he is eternal. He transcends all earthly patterns. He transcends all earthly patterns. He is the great I am. The I am, the Yahweh, that's his identity. It's the identity of who he is. He's eternal existence. He's all eternity, or the eternal existence. He's an unchanging character. Actually, I didn't. Scott, could you go grab my phone for me real quick? I had something on that I meant to print out before, but it's listed on my phone. But Yahweh also is the self-existent being. He is all self-sufficient. He is independent from creation. Who is his creation? Us. But he has an independence from his creation because he's the great I am. He's the great I am. The significance of his name, Yahweh, I am who I am, is a self-declaration of the one who exists. It entails his authority and his sovereignty. I am is the all-powerful one, thank you, the all-sovereign one, the one and only one that can do anything. With all things are possible with Yahweh. He makes the impossible possible. The great I am. What does he say? There's over, I think I may have it somewhere in here, but there's actually over 8,200 references in the Bible of his name. 8,200. He is the great I am. And when you hear him say all the time, I am the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. I am. And he refers himself to so much throughout scriptures. I am. I am the one who heals you. I am the one who delivers you. I am the one who protects you. I am Yahweh. Yahweh who heals, Yahweh who delivers, Yahweh who protects, Yahweh who prospers. And because of the power in the name, that causes us to be able to know who we are and whose we are because of the great I am. And when we speak his name, there's power in that name. There's so much power in that name. Like Jordan said during her prayer, the power of the word, or the word of power. When he speaks forth a word, power comes out. Amen. And that's what he's given to us. When we speak forth a word, power comes out. Creative power. Right. Yahweh is a covenant name. He's a covenant God. And that all exists in Yahweh. It's his covenant with us, a covenant that he will never break, a covenant where he will never leave us nor forsake us, where he will never fail us. What he has promised to do, he will do. A covenant that says, I have your back at all times. I have got your back no matter what. A covenant that says, I am the great I am, who is with you in any type of situation. I am that I am. And the power of his name is the source of strength. His name is the source of deliverance. His name encompasses everything, everyone, the Alpha and the Tav. His name is everything. All existent, all sufficient. Everything that we see and hear and breathe, the very breath of life into things, is because of I am. It's because of Yahweh, the power that is behind that. Being the great I am shows infinite power because he is the last and the first. He is the beginning and the end. He is the Alpha and Omega. He is the name before every name. He is the one true living God and will have no other God before him. Okay, he is the beginning and the end. We just sang it, okay? Your name is the highest. Your name is the greatest. Your name stands above them all. It stands above them all. The great I am. And Yahweh, like I said, he has no shortages of names. But the name that stands alone is that name Yahweh. The name Yahweh occurs more than 6,800 times in the Old Testament. Just in the Old Testament. Yahweh, 6,800 times. It appears in every book but Esther, Ecclesiastes, and the Song of Songs. As the sacred personal name of Israel's God, it is Yahweh. Because of this, the correct pronunciation of his name was eventually lost. English editions of the Bible usually translate Adonai as Lord and Yahweh as Lord. Yahweh is the name that is most closely linked to his redeeming acts in the history of his chosen people, because Yahweh is power. And he's here right there. The first time that Moses encounters God, is introduced to him, to his presence, he says, I am. That is his name, I am. In the Old Testament, a person's name often reflected his character. Abraham means father of a great multitude. Eve means living, which is fitting because she was the mother of all people. Yeshua means savior. Names were very, very important at that time. It could point to a person's disposition, mission in life, and more. And Moses knew that. When he asked Yahweh in Exodus 3:13 what he should tell the Israelites when they ask who sent him, he's essentially asking Yahweh to provide credibility to the story he's about to tell his people. To all the chapters that have yet been written to unfold the story that Yahweh was about to bring forth. He's asking Yahweh about his character and nature. And his answer back is, I am. I am the great I am. Who I said I am, I am. So just to give you a thing about who he is, some of the names of God and what their meanings are. So Yahweh, he brings into existence whatever exists. He's the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. He's Abba. He's Abba, Father. You know, we talk about the times when we were walking through Israel and we heard those two little children running down the street going, Abba, 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 Father. You know, there's something different when you say Abba. There's something so totally different than, walking up and saying daddy or dad or father. When you say Abba, there's something that just ignites inside of you. Abba, Abba, Father. Elohim, the mighty creator. El Shaddai, God Almighty. Adonai, Lord and Master. El Elyon, the Most High God. El Olam, the everlasting God, the eternal God. El Roy, the God who sees. The God who sees. We talk about that in that scene in Chosen where Nathaniel is sitting under the tree and he said, do you see me? Do you see me? He does see you. He is I am. He is the God who sees everything at every time, no matter where you are. You can't hide under the covers from him. He knows you're hiding there, okay? He sees you under the covers, okay? He sees you wherever you're at, and he sees everything the enemy's trying to do to you. And that's what he's saying to you because he loves you so much. Remember that I am that I am. I'm the all-powerful one. He's Jehovah Mekedushkim, the Lord who sanctifies you. He's Jehovah Rapha, the Lord who heals. Jehovah Tedkenu, the Lord our righteousness. Jehovah Nisi, the Lord is my banner. Jehovah Shalom, the Lord is my peace. Nothing missing, nothing broken. Life and wholeness. Life and wholeness. We know we some of us in here have been in certain situations with loved ones or ourselves and in health situations. And I know when we walked through something with our daughter, Yahweh kept saying to me, you just decree life and wholeness. You just decree life and wholeness. Chaim and shalom, life and wholeness. And repeatedly in her ear, life and wholeness, life and wholeness. Because I know the great I am. I am who I said that I am. And when I am says, I am the Lord that heals, it's done. Life and wholeness. Life and wholeness. Jehovah Sabaoth, the Lord of hosts and the Lord of armies. Jehovah Jireh, the Lord will provide. I am the one who provides all things for you. You'll never lack, never miss, nothing missing, nothing broken. That combines with shalom. No lack. Jehovah Rohi, the Lord is my shepherd. Jehovah Shammah, the Lord is there. The Lord is present. He is always there. He never leaves you nor forsakes you. Okay, that's what he says. Never. I am the one who never leaves you nor forsakes you. He's Bethel, the house of God. He's Jehovah Macha, the Lord who smites or the Lord who strikes. So remember that the next time the enemy is coming at you. You have the I am who's got your back, who will strike the enemy for us. He is Emmanuel, God with us. He is Jehovah Teshuri, the Lord is my rock. He is the Messiah, the anointed one. So when you look at the I am in the Old Testament, well, who is the I am in the New? It's Yeshua, the Messiah. He fills them all things everywhere, filled with his being, all existence, encompassing. He inhabits everything. He's in everything. He is I am. Think of in the Garden of Gethsemane, okay? When the Romans came to get him, and they come before him, he's standing there, and they say to him, who are you? Are you he? And he's, I am. I am. And they all fall, boom. They all knock over. He said, Yahweh, I am. I am power. And he decreed that power, and it knocked them all over. That's who was in front of them. I am that I am. What does he say? I am the bread of life. I am Yahweh, the bread of life. I am who I am. So when you think of the power that's in the name, and we're big in names in here, and years ago, with the revelations of what names are and stuff, every name means something. It has some type of significance and meaning to it. And so for us in here, when we came to us having children, we just didn't decide to name them whatever. Okay, we researched a Hebrew name to name our children that had a specific meaning to it. And they all have powerful, powerful names. Because when you give something a name, you are prophesying over their life. You're identifying who they are, who they're going to be. You're speaking into existence the very thing they're supposed to be. The very thing you're supposed to be. So we have names in here that God is my king. God is my king. We have the Lord is my strength. We have names that mean that. The Lord is my strength. The Lord is my help. My rock, my shield. They all have specific things. So every time I'm saying Azraelia, I'm decreeing to the enemy that the Lord is her strength. I'm decreeing to the enemy that the Lord is her help. Always, at all times. Now, if she does something and I have to say Azraelia Yardena, okay, because usually when you get in trouble by your mom, they use the first and middle name. I don't know how many times I heard Sherry Ann. But Azraelia Yardena, I'm declaring to the enemy, the Lord is my daughter's strength. And you have no power, because I am is who I am. And not only is the Lord her strength, Yardena, she descended from heaven. So you best watch out, devil. Okay? Jordan, Yardena, descended from heaven. We have all these different people in here. Avi says something about the latter rain, right? The latter rain, okay? Powerful, powerful names. All of them in here. All of the children in here. There's power in and what their names mean. And every time you speak that name out, it's creating something in the atmosphere. But the enemy is also hearing it. And he's remembering who each one of them are. It's putting them in their place. So he is the great I am, the all-powerful one. And in any situation we may be facing, any challenge that may come up, we need to remember that he's the great I am. I am the one. I am the one who has healed you. I am the one who has prospered you. I am the one who has protected you. When you say, who are you? And he replies, I am who I am, that is so significant. And we must realize who I am is. Who I am is. And we need to take time to dwell in that chosen name. It's a chosen name. We need to take time to dwell in his chosen name, especially if you want to know him. How do you get to know somebody? By their name. What do you start out? When you first meet somebody, okay, hi, I'm so-and-so. Well, hi, I'm so-and-so. You get names. If you're in a relationship with somebody and you've been friends for 10 years and you don't even know what their name is, that's not knowing them, okay? That's not a relationship at all. You have to know their name, because there's significance and power in that name. And when you say the name, that reinforces the connection you have with them. That reinforces the relationship. That reinforces that I know you and you know me. There's power in that name. So one more thing, if we just jump over real quickly, and this ties into the whole I am who I am. If you look at Exodus 4:16, now Yahweh picked Moses to do a mighty thing for him. A mighty, mighty thing for him. And so in chapter 4, this is the whole story about how, he's telling him what he's going to do before the people. And Moses is kind of arguing with him, saying, I'm not eloquent in speech. How can you use me? And Yahweh's like, did I not create? Okay? Did I not create all things? Did I not create, says to Moses, excuse me, who has made man's mouth? I don't think it was you. The last time I checked, I believe it was I am, okay? I'm the one that made everything. But when you look at verse 16, now, Moses is going at him and stuff, so he's like, okay, then I'll have your brother Aaron be your mouthpiece, okay, and speak and stuff. But in verse 16 he says, he shall speak for you to the people, acting as a mouthpiece for you, and you shall be as God. Okay, you shall be as God. It's not saying he's going to be God, but he's saying you shall be as God. You're going to be as my representative. Well, Moses can't do that unless he knows who God is. Moses couldn't do that. That's why the whole thing took place with him showing himself strong in the bush and saying, I am. Moses had to know who God was. If you have to know who Yahweh is before he's going to send you out on a major exploit like that. Right. And here it is right there. He's saying, you're going to be as God. You're going to be like me. How do you get to know how somebody's like? By spending time with them. You get to know somebody by spending quality time with them. By spending not 5 minutes. Right? 5 minutes is not, I guess it could be quality time, but it's not quality time to get to know somebody. It's not sufficient time, okay? You need to spend time with somebody to get to know them. So Moses, in order to be a representative for Yahweh, in order to be as God to people, had to know who he was. He had to go forth and know who he was. And the second part of that is, you're going to be as God to them. That's who we're all called to be. We're all called to be as God to people. We're all called to speak his word to people that we come in contact with. We talk about in here about nothing ever happens by accident. There's always a purpose for something. And you're in Market Basket, and there's a reason why there's a particular person standing in front of you in line, okay? There's a reason why when you're driving down John Fitch, that certain drivers are driving past you the other way. Yahweh orchestrates all things, and he sets all things up for his divine purpose. So anybody that you come into contact with, or that you see, a person that's standing in front of you at Market Basket, they were placed there. They were placed there by the I Am. They're in your shadow, okay? They're in your presence. And if they're in your presence, they're in the presence of the I Am. And who are you supposed to be? As God to people. But like I said, you can only be as God to people if you know who he is. And you've got to know the I Am. You've got to know that there's power in the name. There's power in the name of Yeshua. We sing that song sometimes. Power in the name of Yeshua. That breaks every chain. Okay, that breaks every chain, that causes the prison doors to fling wide open. All right, that cause people to walk by the enemy when the enemy doesn't even see them walk by. They should have seen him. How could they not have seen them in the natural? But he's the God, he's the great I Am. And he hides you from the evil one. So you've got to realize the power in the name. And that power has been given to us to use. And just like when he speaks, when we speak, it's like him speaking. Just like how power goes forth out of him, when we speak, power goes forth out of us. Just like, when Yeshua walked up and he healed the blind man, we have that same thing in us. We could speak to cancer and command it to obliterate. We can speak to legs and command them to grow out. I was just reading recently in a book. Oh, it was The Fourth Dimension. Yeah, right in the beginning. And there was the pastor, I don't recall what his name is, but one of the things one of the big things for him was when he prayed over people that had deformed legs. And when he prayed over those legs, he would see them just grow out instantly, because he knew the power in the name. And there was a particular part where he was saying, the guy that, the individual watching this all take place and stuff, Joe, is watching this, and he's praying over, the pastor's praying over a certain man, and the leg's not growing out yet. Now, he had seen an incident where the leg grew instantly. It was growing instantly. The pastor was telling him this, I'll pray, and I see the leg will grow instantly, and that stuff. And so he was there with the pastor and some other people, and they were praying over this individual, and he's praying for the leg to grow, and it's not happening instantly. So Pastor Cho is like, I wanted to console him and comfort him. I felt embarrassed for him. But he was missing something very important. And yeah, he was missing the faith. And he was missing that, the pastor praying knew very well he was going to get what he was praying. And he knew very well, and if you read the whole thing and stuff or whatever, and you read about the whole fourth dimension and how, the fourth dimension is what we're supposed to be walking in, and encompasses the third dimension. Okay, it takes over the third dimension. And so it changes the molecular structure. And then what happens, he commands that leg to grow, and instantly, boof, that leg grows out. That leg grows out. But that pastor had to know who I am was. He had to know who I am was, but he in himself also had to know, this is what I believe, and nothing's going to shake me from that belief. I know that the I am is going to come through, not just once, not just twice, but every single time. When I speak, I believe that I will see it happen. And you see it before, you see it in the fourth dimension, and then you see it here. You bring it into here. So the big thing with that is you have got to know the I am, especially in these days that we are in. To be as God to people, you've got to know when he said, I am that I am. I am that I am. And I am who I will be. I am that I am.
If you have a representative of a country, or say even the speaker, the White House press secretary, she has to know what, I won't comment, she has to know what the president is trying to say and communicate it to the people. They wouldn't just pick anybody off the street to go up and say, okay, you go up there and represent what the president wants and what he's saying and what he's thinking. They wouldn't just do that. Nobody in their right mind would do that. Just pick somebody who doesn't know them at all to go and represent them. So if you have a representative, say an ambassador to any of the countries, their job is to represent the wishes of the country that they came from. So when we're coming from the fourth dimension, we're coming to represent Yahweh to people, but we can't represent someone that we don't know. We can't represent, and even worse, there's people who go out trying to represent Yahweh, and they don't know him, so they're not being a good representative of him. Let's turn over to Daniel chapter 11. Daniel 11 is talking at a time, and I think it's a paralleled time in history. I think that it's both speaking of something that occurred in the past, but it's also speaking future. History repeats itself, and it's speaking of stuff that's going to happen in the end times. And in verse 31, talking about this evil king that's coming. And it says, "And armed forces of his shall appear in the Holy Land, and they shall pollute the sanctuary, the spiritual stronghold, and take away the continual daily burnt offering. And they shall set up in the sanctuary the abomination that astonishes and makes desolate." Verse 32, "And such as violate the covenant, he shall pervert and seduce with flatteries. But the people who know their God," get that? The people that know their God shall prove themselves strong and shall stand firm and do exploits for God. And they who are wise and understanding among the people shall instruct many and shall make them understand. So the people who know their God, not just the people who know about their God, but the people who know their God. So the question is, do you know your God? Do you know him? Not just do you know about him, do you know him? Everybody knows of him. Even atheists know of him because they have an idea of the God that they don't believe in. Right. Even Satan knows of him, but it doesn't do him any good. But so let's say, do you know Prime Minister Netanyahu? We can say, yeah, I know about him. He's the Prime Minister of Israel. We've heard him speak. You can even know about his family, his wife, where he lives. You can know a lot about him. Rick Renner. Okay, we use Rick Renner's teaching material all the time. And, you can know about them, but you don't know them personally, on a personal level. You can even listen to Rick Renner's teaching so much that you feel like you know him personally. Like, you know his mannerisms, you know phrases that he uses, his story of moving to Russia, his children's names, you can know this and that about him, and those are all facts about him, so it might, to the outside, it may appear that you know him. But if you walked up in a crowd, would he call you by name? Would he recognize you? Whether you know somebody is not so much whether you think you know them, but whether they recognize you. You know, many so-called Christians or people who think they're in the faith are this way. They know of Yahweh, but they don't truly know him. To know him intimately, to know his personality. And like Sherry said, it takes more than 5 minutes to get to know somebody. I mean, first and foremost, yeah, you need to learn their name so you're not going around, hey, you, all the time for the next 10 years. But how many people don't know the characteristics of Yahweh and who he really is? Many people don't even really know Yeshua. Now that can step on some toes. No, I've known him for 25 years. No. Do you know him? Many people might know his biography. They know he was born in the little town of Bethlehem. They know that his mother was Mary. They know that he raised Lazarus from the dead. They know that he healed the blind people. He fed 5,000. They can know all these things about him, but they don't know him. They don't know him on an experiential level. You can even sing all the songs about him, about how good he is, the goodness of our God. And in Yeshua, we can sing the song we sung about Yeshua, but do you know him? I mean, people can sing Amazing Grace, but have you experienced that amazing grace? Does it impact your life? If you really know someone and are in a relationship, it changes your life. You know, I thinking of if two people get married, but then they go out and live their separate lives, and one's living over here and one's living over there. Do you really know each other? Is that a way to carry on a relationship? You have the technicalities. You might even have a ring on your finger. But do you really know that person? Is that relationship changing your everyday life? Our relationship with Yeshua should change our everyday life. It should change our mannerisms. You know, the more you hang around with somebody, the more you start to pick up their mannerisms. And if you really are close, sometimes you finish each other's sentences. You know, that's when you know that you've caught their heart. You know what they're thinking. You know exactly how, you know what makes them passionate. You know what motivates them. You know what excites them. You know what makes them upset. You know that person. You have an experiential relationship. So how do you get to know him? Well, if we already said, by spending time with him. But how do you know that you know him? How do you know? Like if somebody asked you, do you know Yahweh? Or do you know Yeshua? How would you respond that you know it? Like what would be the defining thing? John 14:15, Yeshua says, if you love me, keep my commandments. That's a simple thing. If you love me, you keep my commandments. John 14:21, whoever has my commandments and keeps them, he it is that loves me. And he who loves me will be loved by my Father, and I will love him and manifest myself to him. So if he's manifesting himself to us, that's a revealing of his personality to us. That's revealing who he is in our lives. He who says he abides in him ought himself to walk just as he walked. That's the whole thing that Moses, you're called to be as God to Pharaoh. That means you're going to be talking like him. You're going to be walking like him. You are representing him to the people. Ephesians 5:1 says, therefore be imitators of God. Copy him and follow his example, just as well-beloved children imitate their father. What does the very name Christian mean? It means one like the Christ, one like the Messiah. You're supposed to be trying to be like him in every manner. And so how do you know him? You act like him. You talk like him. You think the thoughts like he thinks. A lot of people say, well, God said that my thoughts are higher than your thoughts. My ways are higher than your ways. Who was he talking to in that passage in Isaiah? He was talking to the wicked man. He was saying to the wicked man, my thoughts are higher than your thoughts. My ways are higher than your ways. And he was saying it in such a way to try to get them to come up, to know him, to think his thoughts, to be at that level. He's always trying to raise people up higher. And now, obviously we're not saved by works. We know that. We're saved by grace through faith. But our works, our actions have to back up what we say we believe. James 2:18-19 Someone will say to you then, you say you have faith and I have good works. Now, you show me your alleged faith apart from any good works if you can, and I, by good works of obedience, will show you my faith. So we're not saved by the works, but you can't prove that you have the faith, that you truly know him, unless you do what he says to do. Another translation said, someone might claim you have faith and I have action, but how can I see your faith apart from your actions? Instead, I'll show you my faith by putting it into practice in faithful action. As we're living our everyday lives serving him, as we are changing the things in our lives that he's telling us to change, that's how we're walking out the faith that we profess. The Complete Jewish Bible says, someone will say to you that you have faith and I have actions. Show me this faith of yours without the actions, and I will show you my faith by my actions. The faith has to be shown by our actions. I like the Message paraphrase of this. You can no more show me your works apart from your faith than I can show you my faith apart from my works. Faith and works, works and faith fit together hand in glove. Do I hear you professing to believe in the one and only God, but then observe you complacently sitting back as if you had done something wonderful? That's just great. Demons do that, but what good does it do them? Use your heads. Do you suppose for a minute that you can cut faith and works in two and not end up with a corpse on your hands? I liked how that puts it. It's blunt. 1 John 2, 1 through 11. Now, by this we know that we know him. See, that's the question. How do you know that you know him? In 1 John 2, now by this we know that we know him if we keep his commandments. Genuinely true believers have a desire to keep his commandments. It's not I have to, I'm under the law, I'm obligated, I've got to do this. It's coming out of a flow of desire to be obedient to him. And, you know, a lot of the people that I hear using the argument of not being under law but being under grace, you know, that's what they say. We're not under law, we're under grace. Yeshua did away with the law. Matthew 5:17 says something different. Do not think that I've come to overturn or do away with the law or the words of our prophets. To the contrary, I have not come to overturn them, but to fulfill them. What does fulfill mean? Does that mean to cancel them out? No, fulfill means to fill it full of meaning, to make it fuller. And so people who use this as an almost like an excuse, I guess. I'm not restricted to the Old Testament laws. I don't have to keep them, which they don't usually. If you start saying, so you think we don't have to keep the 10 Commandments anymore? They'll usually say, well, no, I think the 10 Commandments still apply. Well, how many more of those commandments do you think you can do away with? You can't pick and choose. You can't say, oh, I think these ones still apply, but these ones don't apply to me. But people, if you notice the people who say, I'm not under law, I'm under grace, so I don't have to be restricted to the Old Testament laws. How many of them do you see that they want to do, that they're saying it because they want to do more than what the Torah is saying? It's usually an excuse to do less. Let's take the tithe, for example. So the biggest argument of people who in the Christian circles who say that we don't have to tithe, we're not obligated to tithe, we're not restricted to that, law of the tithe anymore. Very few of them do you see that are saying, I don't want to be restricted to 10%. I'm going to give 30% of my income. Very few people do you see that argue against the tithe are saying it because they want to do more. What did Yeshua say when he addressed some of the commandments? Okay, he said, you see in the Torah that it said that you shall not commit adultery. I say if you even look at someone with thoughts in your heart, that you've already done the act. So he made it stricter. He brought it up to another level. You do not murder. If you hate someone in your heart, you've murdered them. He's counting it as the same thing. So this whole idea that Yeshua came to make it less and say we don't have to keep the law, it's a fallacy that people believe. It's a deception. Your standards as a professing new covenant believer should be, I'm going to make it even higher. Not that grace is an excuse to not obey the commandments. It's going to, I have to say, all the Jewish people, they put fences around the commandments. And a lot of times, we as especially westernized Christians can look at it and say, they're just legalistic. They're being legalistic. They're having to do that. But most often, you find that they want to do it. They have such a motivation to serve God, to show their love for him, that they don't want to even come close to stepping over the line of a sin. So they're going to draw the line back here. Is that such a bad thing? Not really. And if we think it's strict in the Old Testament, some things are even harsher in the New Testament. You go look at the commandments of the New Testament, they don't give you any room for slack. 1 John 2 verse 4 says, "He who says I know him and does not keep his commandments is a liar." That's pretty strong. And the truth is not in him. Now, I've never walked up to somebody and said, because they're not keeping a commandment, you're a liar and the truth is not in you. You can only imagine the flack we'd get as pastors if we did that. But it is Bible. Yeshua, if you say you know Yeshua, don't keep his commandments, then you're lying. And the truth is not in you. But whoever keeps his word, truly the love of God is perfected in him. By this we know that we are in him. So by our keeping the commandments, we're showing that we love him, and that love is perfected in us. Love, we said that the greatest commandment is love. In the New Testament, Yeshua said, the greatest of the commandments is love. Why is that? Because love encompasses all the rest of the Torah. If you love someone, you're not going to murder them. If you love someone, you're not going to go and commit adultery. If you love someone, it covers all the law. But think about for a moment, who's the one who's writing this passage in 1 John? Who's the one who's writing the book of John? John. It's pretty easy question. It's not a trick question. And so what do we know about John? Let's turn over to the Gospel of John, chapter 13. And this is during what we refer to as the Last Supper. And there's a lot of stuff going on in this supper. It wasn't just a relaxing sit-down meal. There's a lot of stuff going on in here. And if you pick up at verse 20, I assure you most solemnly, I tell you, he who receives and welcomes and takes into his heart any messenger of mine receives me in just that way. And he who receives and welcomes and takes me into his heart receives him who sent me in the same way. After Yeshua had said these things, he was troubled, disturbed, and agitated in spirit, and said, I assure you, most solemnly I tell you, one of you will deliver me up, one of you will be false to me and betray me. The disciples kept looking at one another, puzzled as to whom he could mean. One of his disciples, whom Yeshua loved, whom he esteemed and delighted in, was reclining next to him on Yeshua's bosom. So Simon Peter motioned to him to ask of whom he was speaking. It's kind of a sibling relationship, the younger sibling. You asked Mom, you asked Dad. And then leaning back against Yeshua, he asked him, Lord, who is it? And we know the rest of the story and all that. But it's interesting that in verse 23, it marks, and we know that this is John, it marks John as the disciple whom Yeshua loved. And when you start looking at it, it's when the author, John calls himself 5 times in the book of John, the one whom Yeshua loved. That can sound kind of arrogant. I'm the one Yeshua loved. But it's not coming from that kind of a spirit. Because he's the same one who said in John 11:5 that Yeshua loved Mary and Martha and Lazarus. He said in John 13:1, having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the uttermost. That's all of them. So he's including them all in there. In John 15, verse 9, he quotes Yeshua saying, as the Father has loved me, so I have loved you, plural, all the disciples. In John 15:12, he said, this is my commandment, that you love one another as I have loved you, all of you. So he's not saying that Yeshua doesn't love the other disciples. When he says, I'm the one that Yeshua loved, he's not saying that Yeshua didn't love the other disciples. He's not trying to claim for himself the love of Yeshua while excluding others from it, but he's the only one of whom it is specifically said, the one whom Yeshua loved. And why is this? Why? Did Yeshua just have favorites? Did he just say, I like you better than everybody else? You know, he doesn't play favorites. We know that he's no respecter of persons, but he is respecter of personality. He's a respecter of faith. He's a respecter of your respecting him. And we know that in this culture, in this day and age, respect is something that is very lacking. Very lacking. That's another subject. John 19, verse 26, when Yeshua saw his mother there and the disciple whom he loved standing nearby, he said to his mother, "Dear woman, here is your son." And in this, we see the answer to why did he love John the most? John is the only disciple standing at the foot of the cross while he's dying. He was the only disciple that was there. Everybody else had deserted him. Did they love him? Yeah, they loved him. But they allowed the fear of the moment to drive them from him. John initially, we know that he was the naked boy that ran from the garden, but he obviously came back because he was there at the foot of the cross. And so he was there. He was the one who understood Yeshua more than all the others. He knew him. There was a closer relationship between him and Yeshua. He seems to have wanted to be with Yeshua more. Yeshua loved all the disciples, yes. But in John 13:1, as we said, it says that he did. But Yeshua loved John at a different level. And remember in the whole, I'll get ahead of myself here, but he was, when he was talking to the apostle Peter at the end, and he said, "Peter, do you love me?" "Yes, Lord, you know I love you." And he asks him that question 3 times. And we know that in the Greek, there's 2 different words. He's trying to say, "Do you agape me?" And he's saying, "Yeah, no, Lord, I phileo you." And so when you start looking at these Greek words for love, they're on a different level. So in all the places in the Bible where it says Yeshua loved them and all that, he's saying he agape them. He's loving them with the love of God, his own love. He's giving them that highest kind of love. But in John 20, let's go over to John 20. John 20, and this is after Yeshua has been raised from the dead. Verse 1, "Now on the first day of the week, Mary Magdalene came to the tomb early while it was still dark and saw that the stone had been removed from the tomb. So she ran and went to Simon Peter and the other disciple whom Yeshua loved and said to them, 'They have taken away the Lord out of the tomb, and we do not know where they have laid him.' Upon this, Peter and the other disciple came out, and they went toward the tomb. And they came running together, but the other disciple outran Peter and arrived at the tomb first." That was his little, just got to put that in there. I made it to the tomb first. It's kind of funny. But so in this case, in verse 2, where it says the disciple whom Yeshua loved, that word love there is phileo, a love that's a friendship love. So when he's saying, I'm the disciple who Yeshua loved, he loved John as a friend. He considered him as a friend. He trusted him. I mean, who else would you just trust to take care of your mother when you're going to be gone? That's the depth of the trust he had. Loved all the other disciples. It was Peter, James, and John that he took everywhere. But John was the one who had really gotten to know him. He had really gotten to know his heart and who he was and was passionate about finding him. He was the one who was the most eager to get to Yeshua's tomb. That's why he ran so fast. He was trying to get there. He loved Yeshua more than his own life, more than anything. He didn't care. You didn't see him if he was questioned at the foot of the cross, "Are you one of them?" You didn't see him going and saying, "No, I don't even know him," like Peter. He was there. He showed his love by his faithfulness of staying there. And so it should be no surprise that Yeshua felt closer to him because he was giving him that in return. And, when you look through the rest of John's life, and the early church fathers have written about it, that they didn't know what to do with him. They tried to boil him in oil, but he wouldn't boil. He didn't die. So they finally just isolate him on this island. Fine, just lock him away on this island. That will do away with him. And on the island of Patmos, he writes the book of Revelation, okay, and has an encounter with Yeshua. So you couldn't get Yeshua away from him. You couldn't get him away from Yeshua. Nothing could separate him. We see in Paul writes that no height, no depth, nothing can separate us from the love of God. But can something separate you? Can something separate him from your love? Are you going to allow something to separate Yahweh from your love? Is something going to remove you so that you don't give him the love that he deserves? John was the only one who remained faithful, loving, and constantly wanting that time with Yeshua. We see in the Old Testament that this is true of Abraham. Abraham, Yahweh calls him his friend. There's very few people. We can sing the song, I am a friend of God, he calls me friend. But I think a lot of times there can be people, even in natural relationships, that they might think that they're closer to somebody, that person doesn't really consider them in their inner circle. I think Dad had talked about that too, that they did this experiment where they had, here you are, and here's your inner circle, and then you have circles that go out, and you put yourself as close to that person as you think. He said that there was one person who put his piece right on top of him, because that's how close he felt. It wasn't mutual, but he had a relationship with him in his mind and in his heart that he thought was a reality to him. And so I think there can be a lot of people who feel like, yeah, I'm a friend of God. I love him and all that. But if you don't really know him, does he call you friend? Abraham was called a friend of God because he knew him. He knew him, and he was willing to leave his land. He was willing to go to an unknown land and do whatever Yahweh told him to do, and wanted to spread the knowledge of Yahweh. He wanted to know him more. So he was called his friend. Enoch, in Hebrews 11:5, it says that Enoch was the one who pleased God. And he just got so close to God that he just kept walking and was closer to God's house than his own. Yeah. Elijah was a man who was close to Yahweh. Daniel was highly esteemed by Yahweh. These men, we got to look at these men's lives and see, why is it that they were marked in a special way? Why was it that he was his friend? Why was it that he was highly esteemed? David was a man after God's own heart. Did he sin? Yes. But did he repent? Yes. Deeply. And you don't see him repeating the sin again. That's the difference. Yeah, you might miss it. Yeah, you might fall. Yeah, you might sin. But if it's a repetitive sin, that you're not really repenting and you're not really in the place of knowing him, because if you really know him, you don't want to do something that would hurt him. So how can we develop this type of relationship as these men who loved Yahweh with a passion, who he loved, who he considered his friend? Time, devotion to him, faithfulness to him, and willingness to sacrifice our all for him, our life. Not saying, again, like I said last week, it's not just about dying. That's the easy thing. Dying for him is easy. It's quick, and then you're with him. It's living every day and putting yourself aside and doing what he's told you to do when it's not easy. That's what it means to give your all for him. Do you long to be with him? Do you want to spend that time with him? Do you want to spend time in the Word, finding out what he has to say? Or is it, I'm just going to do it to get by with? Again, back to the concept of the tithe. I'm just going to plunk my 10% in the bucket, or do I want to give because that's my act of worship to him? Do I want to spend time in worship praising him because he deserves it and I want to be with him in his presence? Or is it, I'm just going to sing these songs and worship went 10 minutes later than it should have. We need to get out of here. If that's our attitude, then we don't really know him as a heart connection. There's a difference between not wanting to offend Yeshua and loving him with a passion. The desire to not offend him is cautious, but a loving heart only has eyes to follow him and to please him. That should be the motivation. John 21, one page over from where we were, starting at verse 1. After this, Yeshua let himself be seen and revealed himself again to the disciples at the Sea of Tiberias, and he did it this way. There were together Simon Peter and Thomas, called the twin, and Nathanael from Cana of Galilee, and also the sons of Zebedee, and two others of the disciples. Simon Peter said to them, I am going fishing. And they said to him, and we are coming with you. Now, this is a whole other message, but isn't that the tendency? When something doesn't go the way you thought it would go, fine, I'm just going to go back to what I did before. You know what? I'm just going to go fishing. And they said, we're going to do it too. So they went out and got into the boat, and throughout the night, they caught nothing. Sounds familiar. Morning was already breaking when Yeshua came to the beach and stood there. However, the disciples did not know that it was Yeshua. So Yeshua said to them, boys, you do not have any meat, do you? Have you caught anything to eat along with your bread? They answered him, no. And he said to them, cast the net on the right side of the boat and you will find some. See, this is his mark. That's how he met Peter in the first place. So they cast the net, and now they were not able to haul it in, for such a big catch of fish was in it. Then the disciple whom Yeshua loved said to Peter, it is the Lord. Who was the first one to recognize him? John. Simon Peter, hearing him say that it was the Lord, put on his upper garment, for he was stripped, and sprang into the sea. And the other disciples came in the small boat, for they were not far from shore, only some 100 yards away, dragging the net full of fish. And so then you have the whole interaction between him and the disciples. But John was the one who recognized him first. John saw him, he recognized him, because when you really know him, no matter what noise is going on around, no matter who's standing in front of you, you're going to know it's him. When you know his voice, it's not hard for you to follow him. That's why he said, my sheep know my voice, and the voice of a stranger they won't follow. If you know him, you're not going to be easily led astray by every changing wind of doctrine, and this person said this, and this preacher said that, and this prophet said that. You're going to stay steady because you're going to know his voice. And in this day and age, this hour that we've entered into, as we've crossed into 2024, that's vital. We need to know his voice because we need to know what we're to do in the midst of it. John didn't need any further proof. He didn't wait to see if anyone else thought it was Yeshua. He didn't care if anyone agreed with him. He saw that it was the Lord, said it, and went after it. When you know Yahweh, when you know him, all he has to do is speak and you'll believe. Let's turn over to Philippians chapter 3. Philippians 3, starting at verse 7. But whatever former things I had that might have been gains to me, I have come to consider as one combined loss for the Messiah's sake. Yet furthermore, I can count everything as loss compared to the possession of the priceless privilege, the overwhelming preciousness, the surpassing worth, and the supreme advantage of knowing the Messiah, Yeshua, my Lord, and of becoming progressively more deeply and intimately acquainted with him, of perceiving and recognizing and understanding him more fully and clearly. For his sake, I have lost everything and consider it to be mere rubbish, in order that I may win the Messiah, and that I may actually be found and known as in him, not having any righteousness that can be called my own based on my obedience to the law's demand, but possessing that righteousness which comes through faith in the Messiah, the true right standing with God which comes from God by saving faith. For my determined purpose is that I may know him. The Apostle Paul, that's what his purpose in life was, that I may know him. that I may know him, that I may progressively become more deeply and intimately acquainted with him, perceiving and recognizing and understanding the wonders of his person more strongly and more clearly, and that I may in that same way come to know the power outflowing from his resurrection, that I may know him. That should be our motivation in life too, that I may know him. Everything else, we count that as loss. Doesn't matter what you've done. Doesn't matter what feats you may have accomplished. That's nothing compared to knowing him. And, it says in the end time, Yeshua said, many will come to me and say, Lord, Lord, look what we did in your name. We cast out devils. We did all these things. But he said, depart from me. I never knew you. You were so caught up in the busyness of serving, but you didn't actually get to know me. He wants the relationship with us. Everything else will come out of the relationship. And that's why in Daniel it says, those who know their God will be the ones who do exploits for him. Those who know him will be the ones in these end times who will be able to step into places where the works that he did we're doing also. And even greater works. That's what we're called to. But we got to know him. Can't do the greater works that he did unless we know who he is and have that relationship with him. Moses said to God in Exodus 33:18, I pray you show me your glory. His longing, the longing of his heart became, I just want to know you. In Psalm 42:1, David said, as the deer pants for the water brooks, so my soul pants for you, O God. That's the longing that we should have. Paul says his greatest desire was to know him and to know the power of his resurrection. Every other desire pales in significance to the desire to know him. It should. If we are really, really saved, do you know it's possible to be a believer and not a Christian and not know him? We have to know him. Remember when Yeshua said to Philip in John, I think it was John 14, where he said to him, to Philip, how long have I been with you and you still don't know me? After all these years, he's like, you still don't know me. You don't know who I am. Did he know his name? Did he know what he's done? Did he know all these things about him? Didn't know him. When the scriptures talk about knowing God, it's not just an intellectual exercise. It's not just I know all these things. It's about a heart relationship. We use the worships and the songs and stuff to prepare our hearts to enter into his presence. And we give our tithes and our offerings, and that's an act of worship to him. And it's all meant to flow together into a picture of our lives being offered up as a sacrifice to him. When you're doing these things, it's showing your worth, the worth and the value you're attaching to him. That he's worth more than your physical, anything material. He's worth more than anything intellectually that you could be doing at that moment. He is, like Sherry said, he is it all. He encompasses it all. He is the I am. I am, what does that mean? I am whatever you need me to be at that moment. He is everything that you ever will need, that you have ever needed in the past. He is everything. And so it's about relationship. What's a relationship? It's a state of affairs existing between those having dealings with each other. It's in its broadest terms, it means that one object has a connection with another object. So a relationship speaks of connection. Our entire world is based on relationship. There's relationship between the nucleus of an atom and the rest of the atom. There has to be something that's connecting it together, that's holding it together. He's the one who's holding this whole universe together by the word of his power. That he's if he released that, if he didn't have that connection, that relationship with his creation, we wouldn't exist. It's not that we would blow apart. We just simply would stop existing because he has that relationship with us. The way the moon affects the oceans is called a cosmological relationship. You go to the ocean and you see the tides changing. Well, that's the relationship between the moon and the ocean. Einstein's theory of relativity is how one thing affects another. And we go down into it. One atom, how can one atom on this side of the universe know what another one on the other side of the universe is doing? And then your mind goes tilt. But that's called an impersonal relationship. That's not personal relationship between the moon and the oceans. There's not a personal relationship between atoms. But humans can have a personal relationship. Personal relationship has to involve at least one person, and it defines how something affects the person. So in a personal relationship, you can have a personal relationship with your dog, your cat, your food. You can have a personal relationship with something, but it does require a person. But there's a key ingredient that's missing in that personal relationship. No man's an island unto himself. You can't just stand alone. The most important type of relationship is called an interpersonal relationship. So you can say, well, I have a personal relationship with Yeshua, but what you want is an interpersonal relationship. An interpersonal relationship is based on interaction between two or more people. It's give and take. It's not just one-sided, yeah, I love him. No, it's give and take between the two. In Matthew 18:20, it says, where two or three are gathered together in my name, there I am in the midst of them. I am is in the midst. That's an interpersonal relationship. It establishes it with the people, and that's what he wants with us. He wants that interpersonal relationship with us. You know, we focus on John in this whole story and everything, but we got to give Peter a little credit. He wasn't far behind. Okay, in the whole thing when John says it's Yeshua, it's him, and he recognizes him, Peter jumps out of the boat. Now, that's one thing that's good about Peter. He's willing to jump out of the boat in a moment. Remember the past story? But he's learned. He's grown since that first encounter. In Matthew 14:28, Peter says to him, Lord, if it is you, command me to come to you on the water. Here you don't hear him saying if. He knows that it's him. Even though he wasn't the first to recognize him, he knew it was him. And he wasn't waiting, You see later on, the rest of the disciples rowed their boat to shore. He didn't even wait. He's like, you guys can row the boat in if you want. I'm going to be with Yeshua. I got to get to him. And so a lot of people are so caught up in stuff in their life, and they're wondering, expecting Yeshua to just keep waiting on them at the shore. I'm going to get there eventually. I'm working on it. You know what? Sometimes we just got to jump out of the boat and run to him. Sometimes that's got to be the biggest thing in your life. When he becomes the most important person, the most important everything in your life, then nothing else matters. Nothing else will matter. When you know Yeshua, you just can't wait to get to him. And you're not going to be concerned about getting wet. You'll swim if you have to. But he means everything when you know him. And then when you know him, he knows you. 1 Corinthians 8:3 says, but if anyone loves God, he is known by God. Exodus 33:17, the Lord said to Moses, this very thing that you have spoken I will do, for you have found favor in my sight, and I know you by name. When he knows us by name, Isaiah 43:1, but now thus says the Lord, he who created you, O Jacob, he who formed you, O Israel, fear not, for I have redeemed you. I have called you by name, you are mine. That's the relationship we are meant to have with him. Psalm 91:14, familiar verse to us, because he holds fast to me in love, I will deliver him, I will protect him because he knows my name. She's talking about the name in the power of his name and everything. We need to know his name, know who he is, have an intimate connection with him. 2 Peter 3:18, but grow in the grace and the knowledge of our Lord and Savior Yeshua. It's a growing relationship. If a relationship stagnates, that's not a good thing. It's no longer alive. Our relationship with Yeshua should be living. It should be growing and getting better day by day. 1 John 3, verse 6, no one who abides in him keeps on sinning. No one who keeps on sinning has either seen him or known him. We got to know him. Psalm 9, verse 10, Those who know your name put their trust in you, for you, O Lord, have not forsaken those who seek you. Let's turn over to one final passage, Psalm 139. I have to say this is probably one of my favorite passages in the Bible. I actually have it on my wall. I have a poster with it on my wall. Psalm 139. And think of this as, this is David speaking of his relationship with Yahweh, but he's coming to this point of realizing, not only do I know you, not only do I love you, but you know me. You know me. You love me. And the wonder of it. We should never get to a point where that awe is lost. That you know me. That the creator of the universe knows you and calls you by name. Every hair on your head, he's numbered. You don't even keep track of that. He keeps track of everything. And he's the same one who promised that he will be with you always until the end of the age. He will be there. So Psalm 139, verse 1, O Lord, you have searched me and have known me. You know my downsitting and my uprising. You understand my thought afar off. You sift and search out my path and my lying down, and you are acquainted with all my ways. Now, this speaks of a deep friendship. When you really know someone as a friend, you know who they are. And if somebody was to walk up and say that they did something, you know them, you're like, no, that's not something that they would do. But if you know someone, not only is this David saying, yeah, I know you, but Yahweh is saying he knows him. You're acquainted with all my ways, for there is not a word in my tongue still unuttered. But behold, O Lord, you know it altogether. You have beset me and shut me in, behind and before, and you have laid your hand upon me. Your infinite knowledge is too wonderful for me. It is high above me. I cannot reach it. Where could I go from your spirit? Or where could I flee from your presence? Like Sherry said, you can't hide under the covers from him. If I ascend up into heaven, you are there. If I make my bed in Sheol, behold, you are there. If I take the wings of the morning or dwell in the uttermost parts of the sea, even there shall your hand lead me. He's at the beach, yes. Was it Keith Moore says you can get to the other side of the world and get behind a palm tree, and he said, hey, there you are. He knows where you are. Even there shall your hand lead me, and your right hand shall hold me. If I say, surely the darkness shall cover me, and the night shall be the only light about me. Even the darkness hides nothing from you, but the night shines as the day. The darkness and the light are both alike to you. For you did form my inward parts. You did knit me together in my mother's womb. That's that's so intimate and personal. He knit you together. Handcrafted you. You're a handcrafted creation in my mother's womb. I will confess and praise you, for you are fearful and wonderful, and for the awful wonder of my birth. Now, awful means awe-inspiring, not awful. Your birth was not awful. Wonderful are your works, and that my inner self knows right well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was being formed in secret and intricately and curiously wrought, as if embroidered with various colors in the depths of the earth, a region of darkness and mystery. Your eyes saw my unformed substance, and in your book all the days of my life were written before ever they took shape, when as yet there was none of them. How precious and weighty also are your thoughts to me, O God. How vast is the sum of them. If I could count them, they would be more in number than the sand. When I awoke, could I count to the end? I would still be with you. Skip down to verse 23. Search me thoroughly, O God, and know my heart. Try me and know my thoughts, and see if there's any wicked or hurtful way in me, and lead me in the way everlasting. It's such a powerful passage, and it speaks of that intimate relationship we're supposed to have with him. If we really know him, it's going to change how we live our life. It's going to change everything about us. It's going to change our interaction with people. It's going to change our interactions with even people we don't like. It's going to change everything about our lives. So I encourage you, as we come into 2024, make the commitment to get to know him more. Spend that time with him. You got to spend that alone time with him so that you get to hear and know his voice, So that in these days of deception, as we read in Daniel 11, there's going to be these deceiving spirits that are around. But if you know your God, if you know him, you're not going to be deceived. You're not going to be led astray. You're not going to fall. You're not going to be one of those who fall in the battle. But you'll be the ones who do the exploits for him, for his glory, because he deserves it. He deserves the glory. And the most beautiful picture is in the end when all the saints of old come, and we all come before the throne, and they cast down their crowns. And what is their crown? That's the works that they all did. That's what they accomplished in their life. And they're casting it down before him. It's not about you walking around in heaven with a big crown on your head. It's about you having the best present to give to him. Because he's the King of Kings. He's the one who's worthy. So our time is short here. We don't have much time left, but we still have time to add more jewels to that crown, to add more to that crown so that he can get the glory that he deserves. Do you know him? Do you really know him? And you can get to know him even more. Amen? Anybody have something else? No. Thank you for those of you who joined us today on Facebook. We're glad you took the time out of your Saturday. We will see you on Tuesday night at 7 p.m. Until then, you have a blessed week.